Asleep again.
Are you afraid of the things that go bump in the night? Do you feel like a zombie after a long night of tossing and turning? Well, then try Dream from LifeWise. Just one tab daily before bed will leave you feeling rested and refreshed every morning. That's right, Dream from LifeWise. Just one simple tab placed on your tongue, it dissolves and let you drift into dreamland. Text Moose Dream to 754-600-9473 to get you started with your free samples today.
This is a warning to all living mortals. Moose will release 13 of the most terrifying interviews of horror unto the world.
Welcome, Horror Hounds, to the 13 horrifying days of Christmas. I'm your host and gift giver, Moose, and for the first day, thought I'd bring back a friend, actor, stuntman, filmmaker, all-around good guy. Please welcome back Kevin Mangold.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad to have you back on. You know, like we were just talking, that just had to find the right time, and, just everything in life happens when it happens.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. This is fun.
So how's life been since we last talked? You've been busy.
It seems like I've been busy. It's always like that. You get 3 or 4 jobs in a year and people say, man, you're busy. But, most of the time I'm not so busy. But I can't complain. The last couple of years have been fantastic. I think, when we talked last, we were talking Red Clover.
Yep.
And God, I've had so many things since then, stunt work and acting work and, obviously Ghostbusters, playing Slimer, probably the biggest of them, pretty much changed my life.
So talk about getting, an iconic character to step into.
Yeah. It really was. The whole thing is still to this day is weird to me. I get things in the mail like, hey, will you sign this and stuff like that. And as I'm signing, it's a picture of Slimer and I'm signing it. And every time it happens, it's surreal. It's like, holy crap, look at this. Look at what I'm doing. So, I'm just as much a fan of all of it, as the fans are. So for me, it's a lot of outside looking in.
Well, that's got to be what helps keep it interesting and keep it fresh. Is as long as you're a fan of it, it's a job, but it's not a job.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've never felt like I was on a job.
Well, and that's got to be the way to do it, because like when it's a job, it's you just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's a job, it's a chore, it's it's a necessity, and the old saying, when you enjoy what you do, you'll never, what is it? You'll never work a day in your life, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's try to find a job that you enjoy and you look forward to going to.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, in any job, even if you enjoy it, there's a lot of hard work, even just in memorizing lines. It takes hours of, just go in your room and memorize lines. And, still in the long run, it's all awesome. But anything we're doing takes a lot of work.
No, absolutely. So. And it's always going to be work, but it's not, it's you're working towards something that one that you love and you want to do. And it's not, I have to do this to get to the next step. And two, it's more of a labor of love, not just labor.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it.
And I think that's what makes life interesting, is when you get to do things like that.
Yeah. I can't imagine doing anything else. I'm just built that way. If I don't want to do it, I don't do it. Gets me in a bad spot sometimes, but
See, I'm built the other way, where I'll do it, and I'll do it, and I'll do it, and then at some point I'll reach a point where I'm just going to bitch to you about it, and then you're going to get mad that you made me do it. So, but since we last talked, let's jump into things you jumped into, and stunt work on American Horror Story. Like, one of FX's biggest properties. Like,
Yeah.
How'd that come about?
Yeah, I was in 4 episodes, 2 different seasons, and well, on both of them, I haven't auditioned for a job in honestly years. I'm not saying that like as a ego thing or anything, but it's just not. I don't really audition for things anymore. I have so many connections with stunt coordinators and directors that I'm mostly just I get either from my agent or just directly from the coordinator. I'll get a text or a call and, hey, are you available on this day and interested in doing this thing? And a lot of times it's just like, hey, you want to get hit by a car on a bike? And like, sure, and are you
as long as I'm getting paid for it? Hold on, let's phrase that better.
Well, they're always SAG. I don't do work. I can't do a job if it's not SAG. So I'm always paid at least $1,200 a day. So that's SAG minimum. So yeah, I'm always down for getting hit by a car or being lit on fire, thrown into a brick wall or whatever. I'm always up for that. So, but that's basically how both of these came in. 2 different coordinators for American Horror Story, Hotel. Let me think. There was, for Hotel, I was one of the monsters in the classroom, and I jumped on the teacher and ate his face, and I got to like climb right up on top of him and chew his face. And it was pretty gross. We had blood all over. It was sticky. It was really great. That one just came from a stunt coordinator calling me and, saying, hey, are you available? Pretty much the other one as well, 1984, it was so great. That was where I got to come up out of the water in the lake and pulled.
You were the mock Jason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got to do the whole Jason scene.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really great. The whole and getting be there on the set with everybody, and Lily Rabe, to watch that whole scene in person where she's screaming about her son being killed. And it was just so incredible. It's that episode, that one day, is one of the very top experiences of my career, and I've had a lot of cool days.
Well, and as a fan of like campy, not just camp, but campy horror, 84 is probably my favorite season because it encapsulated so much of what drew a lot of us to horror, and it just it captured it so beautifully. And then your scene specifically is I mean it's the Friday the 13th scene, and you want to talk about like iconic scenes in horror. That's one that almost everybody knows. Jason coming up out of the water, and you got to recreate that, which pretty fucking cool. It
was pretty cool. It was. Yeah, it's funny because when the stunt coordinator said, "Okay, you're going to be," he's like, "Do you have a wetsuit?" And I was like, "Yeah." Okay, you're going to be in the water. You're going to be coming up out of the water, and we're going to be pulling someone out of a boat. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't want to call it. I didn't want to say to the coordinator, hey, that sounds a lot like Friday the 13th. But once I saw, I got there, I saw everything like, oh, I get it. I know what you're doing. So it was just really, it was really awesome to discover that too, to realize I'm not just going to do a boat, stunt.
Yeah.
But I'm going
you're getting to recreate this iconic scene. Yeah. I remember watching that episode, and when that hit, I jumped out of my chair because I was super excited to see it. Because that season was packed with Easter eggs. But that one in particular was just gorgeous.
Yeah. The whole episode was really It was
Yeah.
really awesome.
Um, and moving past American Horror Story, you were in a movie that I know we're both fans of, and we talked about it a little bit ago, and we both were super excited when it got to be made, and that's the Primevals.
Yeah.
So now you said that, was this one that you had to audition for, or is this another one of those that somebody called you for?
David Allen himself called me directly and asked me, can I meet you and can we talk about a project? And I'd actually met him for a different project, several different ones actually, and that didn't happen, that didn't get off the ground. And but then by the time he got around to shooting this one, he just said, "Hey, can you come over?" And yeah, like I said, I'd already done suit work for him, and so he knew me and knew what I could do. Um, but I got to spend, honestly, I get emotional when I talk about the Primevals because it's David Allen's life project. It was his dream project, and this movie was literally 50 years in the making, and that to me is, it's absurd, to get to be a part of that. But in addition to being a part of the movie, what what I remember most and what I'm happy about the most is the time I got to spend with David Allen and his creativity before we shot a single, frame of the movie. He and I, he wanted me to go watch the lemurs at the LA Zoo to learn the way that they move so that I could imitate the way that the lemurs move in doing the hominid in the Primevals. And so we met at the LA Zoo one morning and we went in and spent hours just sitting in front of the lemur cage, watching the lemurs. And we were talking about, see how they look, see that? And how they would specifically look at you. If you make a noise, they'll look. And I don't know if you've ever sat and watched a lemur. As a creature performer, I spend time watching a lot of different animals, trying to pick up their movement and maybe combining them and that sort of thing. But lemurs have such almost human facial expressions, but it's still somewhat animal. And so to imitate that is, that was the goal in being a hominid, because a hominid is just, almost a human, but not. And so David and I were basically going over how similar the movements and the looks of a lemur is to a hominid. And so we got to spend hours together sitting there just watching lemurs, just me and David talking. And then after that, a couple days later, maybe we went to a park that's right next to his studio, and there was a big tree. And I went up and climbed around in the tree, and he took pictures and sat and we were planning out how this hominid was going to move and how he was going to drop down out of his cage and everything. And so that to me was the most memorable part of the whole movie. But then, obviously after that, we flew to Romania where we filmed the movie. I was there for maybe a month or a month and a half. I was in Romania and shot the whole thing. I was the only, Primevals is stop motion. And so everything is, puppets that are moved frame by frame. But I was the only live action character in the movie. Me and Jeff Farley, actually, turns out that Jeff Farley wound up playing a hominid, like kind of in the background. He was one of the people who worked on the suits, and he wound up getting in the suit because, oh, heck, what's his name? There was an actor who went to Romania who was supposed to be with me in the suit beside me, and he wound up getting sick. Billy Scudder. He's the guy who played Charlie Chaplin in all of the IBM commercials. If you remember all those in like the 80s, but he did got 100 different IBM commercials for them. But the day he got to Romania, or at least the day we were set to shoot that scene, he was sick. And so it turns out he didn't get to do it. And so Jeff Farley, who was the guy basically who was there to help me get dressed, wound up getting in the other suit. So Jeff Farley is like in a couple of the background things, but as far as characters, I had a whole fighting with the main
Mm-hmm.
buddy, and I had quite a bit of action work in it. I dropped down out of the cage with the other actors, and so that experience going to Romania and spending all that time in Romania was just life changing. Literally, I was a young guy. I think 21, I think, when I went to Romania. So it really opened up my eyes to how big the world is and how different the world is, and compared to America.
So did you also do the scared hominid, like when they're going up to the camp? There's a scene.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. No, all of there was actually two scenes that they filmed after we all left.
Okay.
They went back and filmed in Romania. They went back and filmed stuff, and one of them was, I think, that where he comes out of a cave or something.
Yeah.
And the other one was, there was a big outdoor shot where there's like 10 hominids all kind of running around in like the outdoor arena or whatever, and those were both shot after everybody left. Those were like second unit things, and I was surprised to see those.
So how many years ago then did you shoot your stuff? Because I mean, this is, like you said, this is a movie that from his creation, from his, well, not creation, but from his inception to final creation, 50 years in the making.
Yeah.
So this is a long damn time for a movie.
Yeah, I filmed my stuff. They for the most part, we did principal photography, started in 1994. But he started years before that doing storyboards and building models, and so that's why it's 50 years. But I'd say more like 35 years, 94, so whatever, however long that is, 35 something years.
Well, because and like I was telling you a little bit beforehand, I remember 94, 95, somewhere in there, I was flipping through a magazine at the grocery store, and there was an article about the movie. And I was like, God, this sounds really cool. Because, big fan of, Ray Harryhausen, big fan of, Clash of the Titans, Jason the Argonauts, all that style. And so here's this, at that time, this new movie that's going to be coming out at some point in that same vein. And it's like, all right, cool. And then nothing. And it's like, well, where did it go? And then, ultimately David Allen passes away, and I think it was 99. So it's like, we're never going to see this movie. This movie that's at least a third of the way done is never going to be seen. Fast forward to a year or two back. There's an announcement that just goes across the internet that it's going to be finished. And man, it was like Christmas. It took me back to the day I read about it in the grocery store. I could not have been happier, just as a fan. And the movie that couldn't was, and it came out amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the what is it, animatics? Is that what it's called? There's an animatics version that has all of the scenes that he intended to shoot. That's just drawn, and there's a DVD that has the regular version, and then there's the version that was the full script. And for the scenes that didn't get finished, it's just sort of storyboard animation. And that one blew me away. And God, I just wish that had all gotten to be finished, because that's where the majority of my character got to. Most of my storyline turned out in the animatics, unfortunately. But for me, same as you, exactly. When I saw online, hey, we're going to finish this movie, I immediately called Chris Endicott, said, "What's going on?" I mean, I had previously throughout the years heard that they're shooting this or getting. In fact, I had the mask. I had my whole head and hands that I took back from Romania to L.A., which David and Jeff and everybody, Chris Endicott and Roger Borelli. I'm trying to remember the names of the people that worked on it, but pretty much just gave. We weren't expecting to go back or anything, and so everybody who wore whatever they were wearing got to take what they had, and so I got to take my whole head and the gloves. And I didn't get the whole suit, and I could have. Just I didn't have room to take it home, but I could have brought the whole body. But almost immediately when I got home, Chris Endicott called me and said, "Hey, you think you could send that back to me over here in LA at his shop in LA, because we want to do some close-ups and some shots." Like, oh, dang it. He said, you'll get it back. I promise you're gonna get it back. So I did send it to him, and I never got it back. But I'm happy to know though that I have seen it. I've seen it like just recently. I saw photos of it on a table that some collector had bought it. So I was like, oh, there it is. And I was able to identify it, in fact, from the photos that I have, like exactly where the wrinkles are. And so I know it's that exact one.
That's my head, damn it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm happy to know that it was used, to finish the movie,
Well, and it's you watch the movie and it's on the surface it's just like fantasy movie. It's movie about this group of researchers trying to track down the Yeti, and they ultimately find themselves in a world of lost planet, essentially, of like Lost Worlds, sort of, kind of feels prehistoric. But when you look at it a little bit more, it's almost a like the way the characters are written. It's kind of a redemption story for the main character, Matt, because like nobody believed him when he said the Yeti was real, and here he is, like, look, it's real, and so it's a matter of him proving that. And without spoiling it, there's a death in the movie that the character says, "I'm not going to be able to write that book with you, but I hope you find a good co-author." It it reminds me so much of how this movie was made. That
yeah.
Because David Allen started the whole thing, wasn't able to finish it off, and had to hand it over. And like that scene, it was just like, oh,
yeah,
like,
yeah. You're not the first to make that connection. I've heard that before.
the movie's amazing, but the story with David not getting to see it come to fruition and getting to see the fan support behind it really bites.
Yeah, it does. I still think of David in a positive light. Everything, the movie coming out was just so incredible, and it's all, sad but positive. I'm glad I was a part of it all, and I guess that's, get all philosophical about it, but the more you like something, the more it hurts when it's gone, and that's one that rose to both high levels. David and his whole Primevals experience was a huge part of my life.
And yeah, I mean it's not something that I don't think you'll ever replicate, and it's definitely, I mean, who can say that they were part of a movie that took 50 years to create?
Right.
I mean,
right.
But,
yeah, I really hope it gets seen by a lot of people. It deserves to.
Absolutely.
I think it's the last.
I say, in my opinion, I think it's one of the best full moon movies to come out.
Yeah.
And what I love about it is it's we're in 2024, and it takes you right back to the 90s in a good way. And it is so refreshing to just kind of go back for an hour and a half and, have, that like simpler time of, this is just good, fun entertainment. You don't have to worry about everything going on around you. You can just have not really a feel good movie, but a feel good movie because it warms your soul to just have that like flashback moment, So for me, it's always just going to be just like right there, because that's what it did. It took you back to a fun time.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, definitely, I really got to know Juliet Mills. Max Caulfield was there, her husband was there. And so I got to spend so much time hanging out in Romania with them and like literally in their hotel room hanging out and playing games and all that. So all of these years later, to see Juliet on the screen, just, it was magical, honestly. It was, and I still keep in touch with her now. We're still friends to this day, but to see her, how she was then, and, the whole storyline, her whole character arc. And it was, it was the best, one of the best, seeing that movie. And I saw it in a theater with Jeff and Chris and a bunch of, Jeff Farley helped work on it, and Chris Endicott, who really finished it. It was Chris Endicott is the one who took it upon himself to finish that movie. And so to get to watch it with all of those people and other crew members and stuff was just so incredible.
So what was your favorite scene to do in the movie?
Well, I got to do like stabbing up at the Yeti, and obviously there was no Yeti standing there. And so
there wasn't,
there were a lot of miniatures and things used. And, so that was the one. There was one scene where I was with Juliet, and so I would say that's the one. But it's the most action, the most exciting was where I was stabbing. I had like a big pitchfork, and I was like stabbing it up at the Yeti. And I did a really funny expression that when I watch it now, I bring it back and pause it and watch it again. And there's just this one funny moment where the hominid like kind of looks, I don't even know how to describe it. It just gives a funny look. And I was trying to do a lemur, it's like my one shot of here's the lemur. And that one frame kind of, I stop and go, oh, look at that. Not one frame, but it's like very brief. So that one for me was fun. It's fun watching. When I saw it in the theater, I was like, yeah, super
all that
excited.
time watching the lemurs paid off.
Yeah. Yeah. I think dropping down out of the cage was really cool. I got to do that a few times. It was like a wooden cage made out of wood, and then I dropped down onto the the floor covered in hay and stuff.
Yeah, it was a very Roman-esque set.
Yeah.
Very gladiatorial setup.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a whole outside. There was a whole big semicircle. And in fact, they used the same. They were shooting. Oh man, what was it called? I'm not going to remember it. There was some Full Moon was shooting a TV show at the same time that involved some teenage kid. It was like so and so across the universe or something like that. Dang, wish I could think of it, but. Anyway, they were using all of the same sets, so pretty much everything we were shooting on, they were shooting on. And so it was really funny. So they would just like flip a thing around, and a rock would become, like moss or something, and everything would change on just spinning it around.
Now so that's high efficiency filmmaking.
Yeah, that was at I think it was Snagoff Film Studio in Bucharest, Romania. I remember, in fact, one of the I think it was either there were two, Bufta and Snagoff, and I think Snagoff was one of the studios where Hitler filmed one of his propaganda videos. There's a scene where giant steps and Hitler was standing up at the top of the steps, and there were a whole bunch of it turned out to be, all just not that many people, and then visual effects, they filled it all in. But that particular steps is at the front of Snag Off Studios that we were filming at. So it was all kind of creepy. We were like, oh shit,
Like,
that's that spot. Yeah.
Like, those are some famous
I remember
stairs.
I remember that being really weird. And the other thing about the studio was when I wasn't filming, I do this on everything I work on. I ran around and looked at as much as I could. And what I discovered was entire buildings on this studio lot were just dilapidated and demolished and falling down. And so there were certain buildings that were just, like disasters. And then other buildings that were still working studios. And I thought that was really odd. I mean, maybe a good location if you want to shoot a disaster, go shoot in one of your old offices or something. But
yeah.
It seemed weird.
You're just like a big kid.
What?
I said you're like a big kid, just boundless energy.
Oh man, no idea. You have no idea. I have, especially on a film set, I have more energy than I do normally. And I run around and look at everything. And, one of the things, I double kids a lot. And so I do have kind of like the mannerism of a kid, I kind of bouncy. And when I run, there's like a certain way that like a kid will hop before he runs, and like a person who's older will kind of just slowly, get up to speed. But, a kid will like hop and do kind of a whoop, and I do kind of have those movements, I find just from all the years of doubling kids that my actions are all big, and, I do like kid movements. And it also helps me when I'm in a suit, because, for years I did Mickey Mouse and Chip and Dale and, playing with people in a suit, and now doing creatures and stuff. I find that being overly animated is something that has kind of drained over into my actual expressions and stuff, but it really does come in handy with doing creatures and stuff, just like a tilt of a head or, things like that really read. So yeah, I'm a kid for sure.
Well, I mean, tie it back to our first conversation. I mean, that's what really sold you as Leprechaun and Red Clover is a lot of your mannerisms, in the suit.
Thanks.
Just very subtle, movements. I mean, you easily could have just put the suit on and just been, oh, here you are. But like you said, just the head tilts and different things like that really sold it as this very creepy fucking leprechaun. Not your standard evil leprechaun. This was just this eerie monster. And that's, it was the mannerisms that sold it. So
yeah, appreciate it. I spend a lot of time in the mirror. I do with every character. I spend a lot of time looking in the mirror and learning the angles and the profiles and what works best. And, if you're straight on, it's kind of flat. You really don't ever want to do that. So I take the time to learn where all the things are. So when I'm touching the nose, I don't have to reach around for it, but I know right where the nose is. And if I'm going to rub my eyes, I don't have to try to find them. I know right where they are. And so I spend a lot of time getting to know my face when I'm in a suit, and I will say that I had, be all name droppy. I am a lot because I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of big people, but a large part of that performance is owed to Billy Zane, because I'll tell you that he spent nearly as many hours as I spent getting in to my prosthetic every day. He spent right there in the chair next to me, and we would look in the mirror and he would tell me, no, do this or do that. Or, so he was a big part of it, and he was a lot of fun on that shoot.
Well, in the realm of overly animated characters and animated characters, let's jump into a very iconic character, Slimer in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. You want to talk about like getting iconic characters. That's one. I mean, regardless of film knowledge, everybody knows Slimer. So
yeah.
That now, was this an audition one?
It wasn't. No,
Jeez.
no, I had I'll tell you how that one came about. I had done a spider, a giant spider, and I was driving, I was inside of it and controlling it. That was for um the Curse of Bridge Hollow. And the creature shop that made that spider was working with another shop on some, they were doing like Hellboy 2 or something. And they'd worked together, so they knew each other from Hellboy. And the person who did the spider was asked by Ariane Tutin, who was the guy who created Slimer for Frozen Empire. Hey, do you know anybody who is about 5 feet tall and hopefully has kind of long arms, meaning, like not a little person? And they said, yeah, we know the guy who just did our spider just a couple of weeks ago. So the timing of it was incredible. So I had just finished doing this spider. So like, yeah, we just finished working with Kevin. He's pretty small. He's 5 feet tall, and his arms are pretty long. And so anyway, so I got a call then from that guy from the spider who said, hey, are you interested in meeting with somebody to talk about a project? And I was like, yeah, of course. And at the time they couldn't tell me what it was. They couldn't talk about it. And so anyway, so I went to Ariane's shop and I met with him, and he gave me a hard time about how long my arms are. So now I have a complex about having long arms. But he took lots of pictures and said, get your passport ready. If you don't have it, get your passport ready, because we're going to be filming this thing coming up. It was like about 6 months away. And we're going to be filming this thing in about 6 months in England. And I can't really tell you about it, but I'll tell you more about it, as we go. So I had to go in there a few times for different things. Like they did a full body scan. They did a what do you call it? A plaster, mold of my whole body. So they were getting everything in place. And then finally, about the third or fourth time that I went in there, they had a prototype of the suit. And before I saw that it was Slimer, I had tried putting it together. Like, what are they filming in England? I did see that there was green. There were green things around the shop. I could just see the color green. And so I thought that I was going to be Gollum. I thought I was going to be playing Gollum. And I was telling my friends, hey, I'm going to be playing Gollum. Turns out I didn't play Gollum. But when they did finally tell me that it was Slimer, it really just hit me, like a hammer. It was just like, wow, because, I was, let me see, I was in the middle of high school in 1984 when Ghostbusters came out. And, it was huge. I loved it so much. And obviously I knew Slimer. And so just to think that, holy crap, I am going to be playing that character was really awesome and was sort of odd to me. I'll tell you I went back in there several times to do like kind of video tests that we would send to Gil and to Jason. And one of them was we set up some tables with like a little gap in the middle where I could come, like I was coming up out of a hole, like in the movie. And we had all kinds of food. We had a box of cereal and I had all kinds of stuff. And so I got to just really get into the character, like throwing food in and really, and by that time I had spent hours, literally hours. I've spent 50 hours probably watching just the Slimer clip in the original, in the hallway when he's at the food cart. I watched that clip over and over, and I'd zoom it in and I watched every little minute detail of every little thing. So anyway, and to get back to my story, so at the like rehearsal, I guess I'd call it, we were just doing like video tests to send to them. After I'd done all of the throwing food in my mouth and everything, I got to go around to the back of the camera and look at the playback, and for the first time saw, Slimer, and it was like I was looking at Slimer because the mouth was all done. For a lot of the rehearsal, he didn't have a mouth because my face looked out the mouth. And so that was all open. He had no teeth, no tongue or anything. And it didn't, he wasn't Slimer yet. But that day, I remember that I'll remember that day always when I was in full Slimer and I got to go around to the back and look, and it just blew me away at that was Slimer. It was identical. Every wrinkle and every bump and every fold was identical. And that's because Ariane took the time to literally, there were a lot of like, Ghostbusters 2 and Real Ghostbusters, and there's a lot of different Slimers, and line up all the different versions of Slimer. There's a whole bunch of them, but there's only one original Slimer, and Ariane made the effort and recreated Slimer to a T. Every bump is identical to the original in the 1984 version. The only difference being the scale. And that's the reason they needed a 5-foot tall guy. And that's how it came about that I got the job, was because all of the previous Slimers everything was shot on green screen and there was no interaction with the cast. There was no practicality of the character. Whereas for the first time, Jason and Gil wanted Slimer to be practical on the set. And so I had to be smaller, than Mark Brian Wilson, the original Slimer, is. And so that's how I got the job. Lucky me, I'm 5 feet tall. that's why I got the call.
Well, I think after the cartoon, Slimer had to be more interactable with the characters. Because
that's a good point.
I mean, prior to that, he was just kind of this. Slimer was there, still an iconic, character, still part of the movie, but Slimer was kind of his own thing. Cartoon rolls around, and I mean, he's living with them. He's part of the gang.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So to kind of see that play out in the movie, where it's Slimer's there and he's not really terrorizing them, but he's terrorizing them. It was, as a fan of Ghostbusters and a fan of the cartoon and just everything, that was just amazing to watch, because it's like, oh, it's so cool. It all folded together. And then fast forward to when you and I first started talking about scheduling this interview. You told me that you were Slimer, because like prior to that, I didn't even look at the credits list. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait, what? So I'm going back, I'm watching. Son of a bitch, I know that guy. And it was so cool to watch, and then you watch it as from a different perspective, because I mean, at this point, I know who's in the suit. And it's fun to watch, because like I said, you're just this big kid, and here you're Slimer, who is just a big kid, a big messy kid.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, that's actually part of my, I mean, I get to like in the weeds about the character, but even when I'm doing a stunt, I have to know the character, and I get into character, and I'm an actor first, before anything. And I've always seen Slimer as a kid. So I don't know, there's a lot of different stories. People think who he was before he died, but to me, none of those work. He was a kid, undoubtedly. Mm-hmm. Slimer, when he died, was a kid, because his energy is just too kid.
Yeah.
Like the junk food and that he's a kid, undoubtedly.
Yeah. I mean, he's a big kid.
Yeah.
And yeah, just aside from being a fan, watching you play him it was really fun to watch, because I know how energetic you are, and getting to see that translate on screen, because you see in a lot of roles, and it doesn't really get to translate as much. I mean, you get to see it a little bit in Primevals, but you don't always get to see it translate as well. This, hyper energetic, just boundless ball of energy. And then you're Slimer. And I think when it comes to the suit characters that you played, that's probably the closest I've seen to your energy, where it's, yeah, you're in a suit, but that's you. That's you on screen, and
Oh,
that was really cool.
oh, thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate that. It's awesome.
Um, so after Ghostbusters, or around the same time as Ghostbusters, perhaps, um, and recently, you have a couple of different projects that, well, you were part of a couple of different projects that just came out, a movie, and you were part of a TV show. Now, before we get into the movie, the TV show I find interesting because this is, again, another franchise that has, I said before, horror fans can be very polarizing. Star Wars fans are almost, if not worse, if not worse.
I've been warned.
Um, but you played a Rhodian in Skeleton Crew, the newest series from the Star Wars universe. I mean, Ghostbusters, Star Wars. Did you, when you started down this path, did you ever see yourself in like these like tentpole franchises?
Well, not specifically, but honestly, yeah. I mean, ever since I was, 7, I've kind of had a weird knowing that someday I'm going to be famous and I'm going to be in big stuff. I mean, I don't
Well, I
know if
think we've
that's
hit someday.
I mean, I've always, I mean, I still think I'm still in that mode. I still think someday, because haven't really done anything compared to what I want to do yet. So I'm still in that mode of someday I'm going to be famous and people are going to know me out on the street. But that feeling that I have today started when I was, 7, when I first could even have the concept of being, on TV and stuff. And it wasn't, I think, I'm going to be famous for the sake of being famous, but I always wanted to be good at, like the best at what I'm doing. And for me, I always wanted to just be in filmmaking, and not just as an actor, but, writer and a director. And like, that's what I want to do, so none of that it's never left me. And so I guess, yeah, to answer your question, I kind of did. My whole life, I've always expected, I used to practice signing my autograph when I was, like in 8th and 9th grade. Just, I have, pages of paper where it's just me writing my name over and over and over, because I thought someday I'm going to be famous and I got to practice writing, which is absurd. It is absurd. Like at the time, talking to somebody back then, like, that's so ego, driven. But that is where I was in my head, and that's still where I am today. That someday I'm going to be, famous.
Oh, that's awesome. And I want to take a step back for a second before anyone has a chance to message me about the question. Now, I don't mean that in the like framework of, did you ever think that you were going to be this like amazing good actor? Just there are actors that only want to go so far. They just want to act. They don't really care what they do. They just want to go out and act. And then there are others who, like yourself, set this goal. And your goal is, I'm going to be famous. That's my goal. That's my driving point. That's what I'm doing. And that's the frame where I'm coming from is, how far did you see yourself going before you said, you know what? I'm in a comfortable spot. This is where I want to be. And it sounds like you're still climbing, which is great, because I cannot wait to see what is coming down the pipe, because it's getting better and better and better each time. So I really look forward to where this ladder goes.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a little of both of those. I do definitely sit back. I mean, sometimes, like looking at my resume sometimes, or watching my demo reel, it really does hit me like as sort of an outsider looking in, like, holy shit, this guy has done a lot of work, like big projects. And he's like, I do see it as some, like from the outside looking in at things sometimes. And even like when I'm on a set, I'll look at things completely as the fan, and so I still have that whole side of me where I have so much excitement about the film industry that it just makes me like stupid giddy, run around and look at things on the set, I mean, especially Ghostbusters, like to be on the Ghostbusters set in the firehouse is, I mean, I would have paid them, obviously I would have paid them to be
don't tell them
in the movie. Yeah.
They might have your back.
So, yeah. So the whole thing is still, yeah, it, on one hand, I sit back and I say, wow, I love where I am right now, to look at the things I'm working on and the things that I know are coming up. That's the other great thing. Actors always have a secret. There's always something that's going to come out a year from now that they can't talk about. And that has become really fun for me to know that I can't tell you, I can't tell my friends, I can't tell the closest people in my life about something that's coming out in a year. And that happens so often now that it just becomes fun. It becomes like having this little, I got a secret, that I can, in a year, I'll get to tell you about. And so, I had, the Primevals in 1 week. I had Ghostbusters and the Primevals and Y2K all premiered because at South by Southwest, Y2K played. Mm-hmm. And so literally the same week, I had 3 movies that all came out in 1 week.
You're like, I'm just going to stay here this week. It's okay.
Yeah. And so sometimes I sit back and just go, wow, look at this. Look where I'm at. But the vast majority of the time, it's me sitting back thinking, okay, what's to come? Where am I going now? And, I'm constantly reaching out to people. Like when I say to you, I haven't auditioned, I haven't auditioned in a long time, but that doesn't mean that I sit back and wait for things to come to me. I don't just sit and wait for people to call me. I mean, I do, but I also reach out constantly, every couple of weeks or so. I'm sending out, messages. Hey, I hope you're well, to, people. Hope you're well. Don't forget about me, think of me for your next thing or whatever. And sometimes I hear back and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I hear back right away, like, oh yeah, I'm glad you contacted me because I'm doing a thing next week. And you'd be surprised how often that happens.
Well, I mean, that's how us sitting down today landed. Yeah. I mean, you shot me a, email and I'm like, oh yeah, I was going to reach out to him. And then, here we are a couple months later and we're finally sitting down and doing it. It's just how life works. It's the hustle.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, do it. You can't just, in some cases, yes, you can wait for things to come to you. But you also have to remind people that, hey, I'm over here if you want things to come to you. Yeah. And it's finding that balance, I think, is the not difficult but tricky part. Because you don't want to be the, hey, I'm over here. But every at the day, same time, I'm over here, guys. Don't forget about me, Yeah. So, a Rodian in Star Wars. I mean, again, another one of those, like, it's now a race that's pretty well known. It's, what was, I mean, I don't want to talk about the episode, but what was, like, just getting on set, getting into character, that kind of thing. What was that experience like?
The whole story is, the whole being a part of Star Wars was so awesome. It's really, I was originally called to just be sort of, a Rodian, but just sort of be in the background. And, I wasn't aware that that's what it was, because I don't really do that anymore. And so they called me and they said, hey, are you available? I said, yeah. And then I found out like a day before the booking or something or before the costume fitting, that it was really just for like a background. You're just going to be walking around in the background. And I said, oh God, I wish you'd said that. I just can't do that. You know, my agent doesn't even let me do that kind of thing. And so it became a whole back and forth. I wound up going in to doing the fitting, and in the full Rodian, I ran around the offices and played with the people that worked, with the production staff and the costumers, and like really took my like Mickey Mouse, you know, experience playing with the dogs in the office, and really made a point of like getting in with all of the people there. And then that night they called and said, okay, we're gonna put you in one of the roles. And so I kind of talked myself into that role. And I, you know, it was weird because God, I've always wanted to be in Star Wars, you know, since I was a kid. And that's just something like, God, if I could be in Star Wars, that would be like, oh, I could just rest on my, you know, my laurels. And,
yeah.
Obviously it's not true, but as you know, younger, that's certainly what I thought. And so to have the opportunity to be a part of Star Wars, it was weird because on one hand I was saying, oh, I can't do that. I'm gonna have to turn that down, which was difficult. But I think sticking to my guns, I was able to, you know, turn them around. They said, okay, you're right. You're, you know, I don't know about you're better than that, but yeah, you're right. You can do, you know, more than what we were asking of you. And so come in and do this. And so this that I got to do turned out to just be so great. You know, I get to speak in Rodian, and I guess I can't say too much about it, but you know, the whole Star Wars universe I got to be a part of. You know, the vehicles, the other creatures, to be able to interact and to speak with them, and just, oh my God, you know.
I'd say as a Star Wars fan, stepping into the Star Wars world is just like, oh my God, this is, I'm here.
Yeah. And then aside from my own like world of being, you know, I would kind of encapsulate myself a little bit, like be in the world of it, you know, like really be in the Star Wars world, especially while we're shooting. But, you know, I'm not trying to be the actor playing the guy, but I'm trying to be the guy. And so sometimes that really hits, you know, like for a few, you know, it's like meditating. Like sometimes it's, you're right there in it, and then you're not. And when I'm on a set, sometimes I'm right there in it, you know, where I am that person, that character, and I'm thinking their thoughts and feeling their emotions and stuff. And so I got to be a Rodian for a little while there, and I can like feel like, wow, I was a Rodian. And then what I was going to say was, aside from that whole part of the world of Star Wars that I feel like I lived in for a week, there was the whole strangeness of the outside world of Star Wars, which is having to block everything in with, like, we had everywhere that we shot, we had box cars, like train cars stacked on top of each other, circling us so that people couldn't see. And helicopters.
That's how you find a Star Wars location. You just look for the random.
Yeah, circles of boxcars. Yeah, and there were constantly helicopters flying above, and so whenever that happened, they would run out and throw stuff over us, and get up with the set, and they would cover things and wait till the helicopter was gone, and then it'd bring us back out. And we couldn't walk just from our dressing area to the set in our costume. We would be covered in a whole cloak and everything.
You had a costume over a costume. That's insane.
Yeah. It was the most secretive thing I've ever seen. The character names were all fake character names, so you didn't really get to know who was who. In the script, character names were all like Bart and Lisa and stuff like that. So.
Well, I mean, that goes back to the early days with Lucas. I mean, so protective over things getting leaked, and God, that was pre-social media. I mean, it's got to be worse now, where just somebody walking by, a quick picture, it could blow up the internet. You know, I mean, that's got to be hard when you're trying to, you know, keep, especially in like something like the Star Wars universe, where you're trying to keep things to where you can still have surprises and still have those like, fan moments, you know?
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine trying to pull that off in today's world without like essentially having your own planet to film on. You know,
Yeah.
it's the fact that they can do it is just mind blowing.
Yeah, I've seen, some productions have better success at that than others, and I'll tell you what I've found. Um, it's camaraderie. The sets where everybody's cool and you get along with everybody, and everything is like copacetic. Those people have no reason to be blowing your story. They don't want to go out and, haha, I'm gonna take your fire and your thunder, and I'm gonna post this photo. I'll just give you an example on Ghostbusters. Working on it was such a fun environment where everybody was so happy to be working on Ghostbusters. Literally, that um, everyone had their cameras. We were all taking pictures of each other. We were all taking photos of the set, and there was no worry. There was no concern that any of these people are going to blow it. I couldn't even mention that Slimer was in the movie for over a year. I couldn't even mention to anybody, closest friends. I couldn't say not only that I was in it, but hey, Slimer is going to be in the next Ghostbusters movie. I couldn't say that to anybody. It was supposed to be, a big secret. And so, what I found odd about that is that for a year we were all taking photos, and we were all, in the costume shop, getting, like, as we were building the suit. And I have 2 years now of photos of Slimer that I don't think anybody on the set, or any of the actors or any of the crew that were taking photos, I don't think there was the slightest bit of concern that anybody was going to in any way harm Ghostbusters by revealing anything. And I didn't see anything. I don't think anything ever came up until they revealed that Slimer was in it. When they brought up the standee, there were some standees that were in the theaters and had Slimer on it, and that was the first time that they revealed Slimer. And then at that point, I called the lawyers, and the Sony lawyer and the lady there, she said, "Yeah, go ahead. You can tell people now."
Yes.
So, yep, here I go. So, yeah, I was able to. In fact, I didn't even have an Instagram account at that time, so I had to start. Somebody talked me into it, like, "Hey, you really should have one for this." So I had to start, like, social media, which not a big fan of, but I had to start a social media, and it's been a lot of fun. I've met a lot of great people and stuff.
Well, and that I would say the biggest takeaway from your Star Wars experience is you now have a foot in the door at Star Wars.
Yeah.
That production company knows what you're capable of, and
yeah,
they do like to go to the well a lot. So, Rodian today. Yep. Who knows what comes down the road later?
Who knows?
But yeah, you also just had, a movie come out, Y2K.
Yeah.
And again, talk about something that takes you back to the 90s.
Yeah.
Like, the trailer for this is just, oh my God. So it has like the AOL instant messenger, the dial up, Bill Clinton's giving speeches. I mean, it's like, I remember all of that. And it's just like, oh. And I mean, I know we're talking 20 years here, but it feels like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that we're 24, I guess it'd be 25 years removed because it takes place in 99. And we're making a horror comedy about Y2K. And the real horror was watching everybody's face in 99 when they weren't sure what was going to happen when 2000 hit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like that. I remember vividly because it was one of those times where people lost their shit because they absolutely did not know, are the banks going to, are we going to lose our money? Are we going to do all this? How are computers going to react? well, they're just going to roll over and go to zero. That's how they're going to react. Like kids had a better grasp on reality than adults did. It was a weird time.
Yeah.
But without giving too much away, what do you want to talk about for Y2K?
Well, I got to play a really great character. It's a robot. I can say it's a robot, and his name is Cool Blue, and I guess I can say that because that's on IMDb. Yep. And he's in the trailer. You can see him in the trailer a little bit. But I got to have some really great scenes. Rachel Zegler and Kyle Mooney was so funny. So I got to act with all of the leads, and I'm in a good portion of the movie. So it's a real good role. It's not just a passing creature or something. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I didn't get to see it when it played at South by Southwest, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I'm going to see it on. Hopefully, we're going to have a premiere here. I'm waiting to hear about that. They're still talking about that, but whether there is or isn't, I'm going to make my own premiere. I'll go on the Thursday, midnight when it comes out. And in fact, Frank Langley played another robot. There were two robots in it, and he and I are both made plans. We're going to go see it. So we're going to have our own little Y2K.
The robot viewing party.
Yeah, if there isn't one. Yeah, that was really a lot of fun. Jaden Martell is in it, and I got to, I was with him for a full. It's interesting. I was shooting at the same time. I was shooting Ghostbusters, so I went to London and I was there for about 3.5 weeks, and then I flew back to New Jersey, where we shot Y2K, and I was there for about 3 weeks, and then I went back to London for another 3 weeks. So for that couple of months, I was just flying and constantly working. And so I brought all of that up to say that, oddly enough, on Y2K, I was working with Jaden Martell from It. And then on Ghostbusters, I was working with Trevor. Oh, God, what's his name again? Can't believe I forgot his name. Anyway, played It. The kid who played Trevor was also in It.
Yeah.
So I was taking messages back and forth between the two It guys, and it was just kind of surreal that here I am working on movies with the two stars of It. So it was kind of strange. But Y2K, getting to work with all of those, Matt Mason Gooding, and there was Alicia Silverstone. I really had a blast. The suit wasn't as easy to operate as Slimer. That was one of the weird things, going literally back and forth between one job and the next, was Slimer was pretty light, was made out of foam and stopped at my waist. And so lots of air could go up underneath, and it was airy. I could stay in that thing all day. And in some cases I did. But Cool Blue was a robot that was 124 pounds, I think. And I weigh 106. And
I was going to say, it's got to weigh more than you.
Yeah. And it was very enclosed and, hard to see and hard to breathe. And so that, it was night and day between the two suits. But I love Cool Blue. Cool Blue, when the audience gets a load of Cool Blue, I think this movie honestly is going to be such a hit. It's going to be one of those, that year after year after year, people are gonna watch. It's gonna be a classic.
If the trailer is any indication, I think you're right. I mean, it definitely has the potential to have that little bit of slow burn, but we'll keep finding a new audience, because from just a little bit that seen in the trailer, it has that it definitely has the right chemistry to have the a feel-good comedy, but in horror, and the production company putting it out isn't a slouch at what they do. I mean, they're one of the top tier production companies, so
yeah. And they've really, I think this movie really has something for people that are, my age and people that are, teenagers, because there's the whole 90s, for people who were teenagers in the 90s, they're not going to get a lot of the jokes, but they're going to get all of the nostalgia. They're going to get all of the, every item that's in there is, stuff that, the little Mattel football game, all of the things that we remember. And, Alicia Silverstone is going to have her own group. Fred Durst is going to have his fans. And I think it's going to hit a wide range of people. And it's going to stick around for a long time. I have a feeling.
I think you're right. And I definitely look forward to seeing the life and longevity of this movie.
I haven't heard anybody say, but when I read the script, it was very reminiscent of E.T. I mean, for me,
I could see that.
My character, Cool Blue, to me was very much the equivalent of E.T. And so that's how I went into the whole movie was, he's it's like if you think about E.T., he's lovable and the audience loves him, but he's still an unknown quantity.
Mm-hmm.
He might be dangerous. You don't know. He's an alien. You don't know how dangerous E.T. might have been. And so there's that kind of, and same as Slimer, oddly enough. And in putting the two characters together, I kept finding a similarity in their mind, their inner thoughts. They're pretty similar,
Hell yeah.
In that they're lovable, but yet there's also something scary about them that you're not sure if they're to be trusted,
I could see that. So, but before we wrap this up, do you have anything scheduled that you can let people know that you have coming down the line?
I do not. I just worked on a pretty cool project that I can't really say much about right now. They made me promise.
No, this is one of my favorite things, because it's like, in the years I've been doing this, it's what I like is after I've interviewed somebody, I like watching the IMDb or like just the news things and see when the name pops up. It's like that's what they were referring to. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. I've got a couple of those right now. I've got one that I just worked on last week, and I have one that's coming up this week, the end of this week.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
So where can listeners, I know you said you don't do social media that much, but where can listeners keep up to date with those upcoming projects and everything on social media?
Yeah, well, my website is kevinmangold.com. And I'm on Instagram, and that's at Horace Stunts, kind of like horse, but HORACE Stunts. So at Horace Stunts is me, but you can also just go to Instagram and search Kevin Mangold, and I'm sure you'll find me.
And I'll put those links in the episode description, and you can find me and other great podcasters over at Electronic Media Collective, or if you just want to find me, head over to Moose's Monster Mash on Facebook or Moose Media Inc. on YouTube. And if you want to hear more about Kevin's career, go back into the archives of Moose's Monster Mash and check out our interview from a few Marches ago where we talk Red Clover and the rest of his career. Kevin, having you back on was phenomenal. You're, again, welcome on anytime. Just like we talked about, do that little, hey, I'm over here, remind me.
Yeah, right on. I'll do it.
And listeners, welcome officially to the 13 Horrifying Days of Christmas. Come back tomorrow for another all-new episode. And until next time, mash on.
This has been Moose's Monster Mash. Come back for more chills and thrills if you dare.